It's hammer time! And if you don't get that reference, man, you gotta look it up. 5 types of hammers that I think you are gonna need in your DIY life. And yes, there are more of these types of hammers out there. There are subcategories within each one of these types. I think what I've got here over my 20 plus years of home ownership, and I work on tons of cars as well. I am not a carpenter. I don't do a whole lot of woodworking. All right, let's start it off. Number one, most people would just call this a generic hammer. This is actually a claw hammer. You can use these for a whole lot of things. Most people would use them to hammer nails and, well, pull nails, but honestly, anything that needs to get whacked that's pretty sturdy, you could probably use this. You can also hit them on the sides right here, depending on, what you're up against. I've used a lot of hammers like that before. And you can use this a lot like a crowbar. It doesn't have to be just nails that you're pulling out of there. You can use this end of a hammer before. You can kind of grip them like this and, grip them like this and tap things like that. I picked up this one rather recently. I haven't got a whole lot of use into it. The one I used all the time was this. This is probably my most used hammer, and the reason I retired it is some of the fiberglass up here is flaking and splintering, and one time when I grabbed it like that, I got a nasty splinter in my hand. These come in a whole lot of different lengths and weights. This is a 20 ounce. This one feels like it's probably a 16 ounce. This one was made in the USA a long time ago. There's a lot of them that are made in China now. There's another one I have. This is an old Plum brand hammer, all wood construction handle. And this one's really nice because it's got a different angle on the rear here, the claw itself. You can see quite a vast difference on that angle. So that can come in handy when this thing's not going to get there. This thing can. Around the house, you're going to run into needing a claw hammer probably more than any other hammer as just a DIY person. If you're getting into a whole lot of framing work, like if you're building a room, here's one I'd recommend instead of a claw hammer. You'd want to step into a framing hammer if you're doing a whole lot of framing work or a whole lot of hammering of nails. These come in handy. They are much longer. You can see right there, it's even off the screen. They're much longer, and you're meant to hold down here to get the leverage. And there's a lot more weight hitting at the top like that. And again, framing hammers come in a whole lot of different weights, lengths, handle types. This is a 19 ounce. I recommend a framing hammer if you're getting into a whole lot of that type of work. Hammer number 2, everybody's probably going to need a rubber mallet. When you're tapping on something fragile, let's say ceramic tile, you're trying to line 2 of them up. If you're trying to knock some things into place and you don't want to mar up the surface, a rubber mallet's probably one of your top choices. Or anything that can't get hit with metal, hit it with rubber.
Hit it with the rubber.
This is probably my 3rd or 4th one. I've used it so much they usually break in half or crumble at the front. Then you got to go get yourself another mallet. They come in all shapes and sizes and tons of different categories of them. This one here is a 16 ounce mallet, meaning the head itself weighs a pound. And this is the size I probably use the most, is this 16 ounce. They also make wooden mallets for other applications like hitting wood. A lot of people like to use wooden mallets. Hammer number 3. These have quite a few different names. It's basically a one-handed sledgehammer. Some people call these drilling hammers, club hammers, lump hammers, Thor hammers. There's tons of different names of these things. And you can use one of these in some various applications, whatever you're trying to destroy, whack, move, hit, bend, mash. It can do that this way and this way. And this one here is a 3-pound one. I find that to be a good weight for most of my work that I do or want to hit with this thing. It'll either move whatever you're trying to move or it will destroy what you're trying to destroy for the most part. And if not, then, step up to the full sledgehammer. I didn't cover that one in this video for one main reason: it can't fit on the table. But let's just say this is a sledgehammer. And there are bigger versions of these, bigger heads, longer handles. One of my more used hammers, this is a dead blow hammer, and listen. It is filled with sand. Some of them are filled with pellets or steel shot beads. And what it does is it makes the whack harder and the bounce back almost non-existent. So when you hit something, it stays solid against there, whereas a rubber mallet kind of bounces back at you. And that's no camera trick, okay? This is the 2-pounder. They have a lot of different sizes of these. And this one I find to be the size I use the most with what I do in my garage. I use this a lot. This is what I use to encourage some car parts to move quite often. If you got to hit some heavy, big stuff, I'd upgrade to a bigger one of these. Hammer number 5. This is a ball peen hammer, predominantly used to work metal. It's got a flat side and it's got a rounded side so that you can work different curves and angles. and spots with the hammer. Again, these come in all different lengths, sizes, and I'm actually going to show you a couple different examples. Here's a much smaller ball peen hammer for working smaller, lighter gauge metals, and just a little bit more finesse work than a 2-pound version. This is probably only a few ounces. This is very, very light. And within the peen family of hammers, you would have the cross peen, which means this is now not a ball at the end, okay? You got the peen and the cross. And this would be for working corners or various other spots, I guess, that the ball wouldn't really even fit into. You can see the profile even on my smallest one. That's not going to fit into some spots like the cross can. And there's a slightly twisted version of this called a straight peen, and I'll show you what that is. This one unscrews so I can kind of show you this example. It would go like this. So then you'd have more of an axe-style front end to it, okay? Instead of it being this way, it would be this way. And that can come in handy when you're working a different angle. I think I picked this up at an estate sale. It came with a whole bunch of other tools. I have no idea why this one unscrews, but it does. I wonder if this had interchangeable heads at one point. I'm not entirely sure what advantage this gives me when I can only unscrew this head. It had to have had some type of advantage. And I wonder if KJB would know. I'd really like to find more heads for that. So if anybody knows, anybody has some information on this one, hit me up in the comments. I'm curious if I could find another head for that. Hey, this here is my first ever hammer. You can see it's a pretty darn small claw hammer. Let's put it in comparison there. It's a pretty darn small claw hammer. My dad gave this to me when I was a wee lad. I'll probably never use it again, but it's nice to have this little relic sitting around. Ball, peen, ball, peen, ball, peen, ball. Dead blow, dead blow, dead blow, dead blow. Sledgehammer. Cross peen. Mallet, mallet, mallet. Ah, hammer. Framing hammer. Framing hammer. I should also point out that that's a hammer. That's a hammer. That's a hammer. That's a bigger version of that hammer. That's a hammer. This is MC Hammer. Let me know which hammer you use the most for your profession or your DIY, or if there's a type of hammer that I didn't cover here that you think, man, that's probably the top 5 or at least the top 10. Let me know.
Hey, you should subscribe.
It is hammer time. Twerk and twisted. Oh.